Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. First, the highlights. Confusion in some parts of Lagos earlier today following protests over scarcity of new Naira notes. Security agents on ground to forestall violence. Kaduna State Governor Naira asked citizens of state to continue to accept old notes despite federal government's directive. Plus, former Minister of Finance Ketu says currency swap policy will lead to economic contraction, believes policy is ill-timed. Thanks for joining us. I'm Millicent Walker in Lagos. Let's bring you some developing news now. Human and vehicular movements which were disrupted in several parts of Lagos earlier today following protests over the scarcity of the new Naira notes. There was tension in places like Ojota, Ketu, Mile 12 and Penn Cinema. Some aggrieved persons stormed major roads in protest. The situation has, however, been brought under control with deployment of security operatives confirming the unrest. The Lagos State Police Public Relations Officer Benjamin Hundeyin said operatives of the force have been positioned in identified areas. Meanwhile, the Kaduna State Governor, Naira, has said that the nationwide broadcast by President Buhari limiting the legal tender status of old notes to only 200 Naira amounts to total disregard and disobedience of the February 8th ruling of the Supreme Court. In a broadcast to the people of Kaduna State yesterday, Governor El-Rufai expressed concern that the peaceful coexistence as a state and a nation is being placed under deliberate danger using intentional combination of fuel and cash supply disruptions. He also assured the people of Kaduna State that none of them will lose their money in old notes, as he asked them to continue the old notes in their daily transactions pending the Supreme Court ruling.
The lawful means being utilized to solve our problems. On behalf of the Kaduna State government, I wish to assure you that none of you would lose the money you have in old notes. Let no artificial or illegal deadline frighten you. Whether you live in towns, villages, or in our isolated rural communities, do not feel stampeded to deposit your old notes into the banks. Hold on to them. Continue to use them as legal tender as ordered by the Supreme Court of Nigeria. No deadline can render them worthless, ever. The law is on your side. The Central Bank of Nigeria Act 2007 in Section 20, subsection 3, and the Bills of Exchange Act both oblige the Central Bank of Nigeria to recognize your old notes and give you value in new notes whenever you bring them to the CBN, even in the next 100 years. Therefore, as your governor, I wish to assure you that the Kaduna State government, in collaboration with elected legislators, our traditional institution, elected local government councils, markets and traders associations, and so on, will help you collect, record, document, collect and deliver all your old notes to the Kaduna branch of the Central Bank on your behalf into the new ones immediately after the elections.
Well, similarly, a former Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning of Nigeria has faulted the currency redesign policy of the government, saying those behind it did not carefully consider the timing and the impact it will have on the citizens. Mr. Kalu believes that adequate time should have been given for policy to gain ground before it's officially rolled out. He predicts there will be a contraction in the economy and that will lead to more suffering for citizens. Mr. Kalu queried the money scarcity and blamed it on the formulators. He was speaking earlier today on our political program, The Verdict.
The prediction clearly is that there will be a contraction in the economy. But I can only say that if I assume that we are not going to do anything else, what we have to do is not just introduce more money into circulation, something closer to what was withdrawn, but there are other corporate policies, other essential policies, and there are other ways of judging success. You see, as I mentioned already, employment is one, reproduction is another, and not just inflation happens to be one of the important ones, but there are at least 5 or 6 other things that you have to look at before you now say, oh, it has had salutary effect. The suffering, the impact on health, the impact on transportation, the impact on schools. This will impact on schools, feeding in schools, boarding houses where people have to go and buy this thing, because the policy as put together on this occasion should have taken into account just where we stand on all these variables. So my prediction is also predicated on what we are going to do next. I think the action that the president has taken is in the right direction. And I heard how it was said it will be done immediately. Now, how do you distribute how much? As I said, again, we are not told how much of these 200, what does it amount to? How much additional money are you talking about? This additional money, how have you planned how you are going to distribute to all the states, including the federal capital, to all the towns, to all the small villages, and so on and so forth?
Well, also reacting to the Naira redesign policy is a legal practitioner, Augustine Audu, who believes that the federal government's decision to extend the 200 Naira old notes for 60 days alongside the new redesign notes is an affront on the Supreme Court. According to Mr. Audu, politicians are quick to adhere to court judgments only when it is convenient for them.
Court has already given an interim order to maintain status quo pending the determination of the suit. So it is an affront on the judiciary, and I don't think the judiciary at this point should just fold his hand and allow this to go unpunished. We are not really concerned who is involved. The Attorney General is there. He made an undertaking. He aired his view even on Channels Television to say the government will obey the decision of the Supreme Court and will obey the order of the Supreme Court. That order has not been vacated to the best of my knowledge. Now, to now vary the president, what they have done, what the executive have done, is to, on their own, vary the order by saying 200 Naira note will continue to coexist, while 500 and 1,000 will cease to be illegal tender. That is not the order of the Supreme Court. Politicians are quick to obey the court when it favors them. But when it did not favor them, they will restrain from obeying the court. And that.
But it's another view from a public policy think tank, the Neo-Africana Center, NAC, which has thrown its weight behind the currency swap policy of the federal government. The center says it is persuaded to back the policy following valuable light, which it said President Buhari shared in his national broadcast. NAC says the economic outcomes flowing from the new monetary policy are laudable, and it should be supported by patriotic and well-meaning Nigerians. In a statement by the Director of Public Affairs, Mr. Jenkins Udu, which reads in part, as an institution which pays serious attention to matters of public policy and democracy, we urge Nigerians to embrace this new monetary policy. We call on Nigerians not to be taken in by the antics of naysayers who have been sponsoring protests in part of the country. The centre calls on Nigerians not to make themselves available to be used by unscrupulous elements to disrupt public peace. Joining me for more on this is Mr. Manus Onwukwe. He's a legal practitioner. He joins me now on the policy from Abuja. Thank you and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, Nigerians.
Good to see you. We have a lot of issues before us now. How do you interpret the currency swap policy?
It is a potpourri in our national history, particularly in our currency management. I must begin by saying what the Constitution provides. Under the second schedule, Part 1 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, particularly at item 15, that is paragraph 15, it provides that issues of currency coinage are of the exclusive legislative list of the federal government. That is to say that it is only the National Assembly that can make any legislation as it pertains to currency of Nigeria. Here we are today. If you juxtapose the provision of the Constitution vis-a-vis the CBN Act, as it were, the power to make pronouncements as it pertains to currency in Nigeria resides exclusively on the CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria's governor. Here we are today. The governor of CBN, acting in tandem with the Bankers Committee, have chosen to redesign the Nigerian currency, and with the approval of the president. Same is on course. Some individuals, particularly the government of Kaduna State, Kogi State, and the likes, chose to elect to approach the Supreme Court, to challenge the action of the CBN. Suffice to say, I must say that does the Supreme Court in this circumstance seized with original jurisdiction to entertain the suit? Let's leave that. We've gone beyond it. The Supreme Court, however, has made an interim order directing that the status quo be maintained until the substantive suit is heard. Why that is pending, as it were, the matter came up again on the 15th. The court, because some other parties, some other states seek to join the suit, the court adjourned to 22nd of February 2023. Why is that pending? Unfortunately, I must add, yesterday, our president, in the national broadcast that was aired by 7 a.m. in the morning, overreached the Supreme Court. Overreached because the matter is lis pendens. It is pending at the highest court of the land. The pronouncement of the president, that is to say, approving the continued usage of 200 Naira notes and prohibiting or seizing the legality of the usage of 500 and 1,000 Naira notes, is an usurpation. The president usurped the powers of the judiciary. We must emphasize and re-emphasize that the Constitution clearly defined roles of these three arms of government as contained under Section 4, 5, and 6, respectively, of the Constitution. Section 6 confers judicial powers on the Supreme Court, on the judiciary, headed by the Supreme Court. Now that there is a dispute upon which court has jurisdiction to entertain the dispute between these states and the federal government, why is the Supreme Court is yet to make a pronouncement thereto? The president, the executive, had made the pronouncement. Now, whom shall Nigerians obey? Shall Nigerians obey the Supreme Court or the president? Who amongst these has the power to interpret or adjudicate upon disputes? The president is the head of the executive, and he is a party to the matter that is pending in the Supreme Court. It is an usurpation.
And this is why
to add that whilst we are looking at this, the Kaduna State Governor, Madam Arewa, had a state broadcast yesterday, directing or rather opposing the directive of Mr. President. Such an affront by a federating unit of the Federation, if you ask me as a lawyer, amounts to treason. It's treasonable. It must be condemned.
So, Mr. Onwukwe, if I might jump in, you've said three things. You've said first, it's not the states it's not in the interest of the state, or according to the law, it's the National Assembly that should bring the matter rather than the states. But you know, the states are saying it borders on public policy. The riots, they're saying the sufferings for their people, and then they took this matter to court. And you've also said the president in his broadcast, sort of an affront on the Supreme Court because of the status quo with the courts. And now you're saying that the Kaduna State governor, his actions borders on treason. So essentially, what are we saying? I mean, it's almost as if we're saying everybody is wrong, but then how do we solve the problem?
Excellent. Now, we are already in a state of quagmire. Our constitutional crisis is here before us. A matter is pending in court. The president, notwithstanding, overreached the court. What shall the court be doing come 22nd of February 2023 in view of the presidential proclamations yesterday, 15th, or day before yesterday, 15th? What shall the Supreme Court be doing on 22nd?
So should we wait until that date?
Have been overreached.
So, Mr. Onwukwere, should people wait until the 22nd? Should we all wait?
Unfortunately, we are presented with diverse confusion. Now, today, the governor of Kano State, Ganduje, had issued threats that should anyone in Kano State refuse to use or refuse to accept old notes, such person or persons risk being arrested. And in fact, the operatives of state in Kano State have begun to enforce the directive of the governor of Kano State. We must not forget, be it Kano State, be it Kogi State, be it Kaduna State, or any state for that matter, is a component of Nigeria. Now, issue of currency, as I've said before, is of the exclusive reserve of federal government. What this portends is that states do not have powers or bias to legislate or give directives as concerns currency in Nigeria. But here we are today. Kaduna State government is threatening. And some other states are threatening. So whose directive shall we obey? Is it that of the president? Or that of Ganduje? Or Arewa? Or Yaya Bello? Or who? So it's a whole bulk of confusion here and there.
A quagmire, we do agree on that. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much. These are some of the issues we'll continue to speak about until we have answers. Mr. Manus Onwukwere is a legal practitioner. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. God bless you.
We'll have more when we return. Just stay with us. Welcome back to Lunchtime Politics. Now, ahead of the 2023 general elections, the Independent National Electoral Commission Chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, has inspected the Abuja International Conference Center, which will also serve as the National Collation Center Situation Room for the polls. In company of other INEC officials and security, the chairman says it is to assess the level of preparedness. According to the electoral umpire, it is reminding voters that accreditation and voting for next Saturday's presidential election shall commence 8:30 a.m., close at 2:30 p.m. However, anyone who is on the queue before 2:30 p.m. shall be allowed to vote. Residents of Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, welcomed the All Progressives Congress presidential candidate, Senator Bola Tinubu, as he took his campaign message to the state capital ahead of the 2023 presidential election.
The Mapo Hall venue of the APC presidential campaign rally and its adjoining streets bristled with excited crowd supporters in what appears to be an unprecedented political rally. Senator Tinubu, who had earlier visited Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State and also conferred with traditional rulers from the southwest, managed to reach the campaign venue at around 6:40 p.m. The presence of the candidate electrified the latest supporters, who danced to campaign songs, waving to the crowd. Senator Tinubu also danced as he moved around the podium, along with the APC governorship candidate in the state, Senator Teslim Folari, and other party leaders. However, the wild excitement amongst the supporters and set in darkness did not allow for speeches. A Before hitting the campaign venue, the APC presidential candidate met with traditional rulers in the state. At the end of the meeting, which held behind closed doors, the traditional rulers in the communique pledged their support for Nigeria's unity, peace, prosperity, and progress. They also promised to support democratic process based on the inalienable right of all persons to make independent choices.
Well, earlier this month, some physically challenged persons lamented the hostile environment and discrimination against their ambitions, and this was during party primaries. They say the resultant culture denied them of their rights to dignity of the human person and development of their full potential to participate in the development process of Nigeria. Well, we speak right now on elections and the physically challenged. Joining us here in the studio in Lagos, Mr. Danlami Basharu, he's Executive Director, Anglo-Nigerian Welfare Association for the Blind. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Talk to us. It's just a few days to the elections. Do you think there is a supportive and conducive environment for the blind to vote?
Well, on paper, I believe there is. On paper, we're told there is a conducive atmosphere for persons with disabilities, but we're yet to see that on ground. Of course, INEC has done quite a lot in trying to improve the situation for persons with disabilities, but it's now going to the test in that we're sure that things will be done differently, but we don't know yet.
But what are your expectations?
Well, I expect all people with disabilities to have their PVCs and come out and vote like all other persons, and I'm sure it will be smooth and free, fair, and credible.
Is there a call for those who are not members of your association, who are in different states? Do they know what to do on that day? If there's a case of overcrowding, how do they maneuver?
Well, yes, they've been. I mean, there's a lot of sensitization that has been going on, and INEC itself has been doing a lot of work on sensitizing people about the elections. So we're just waiting to test the reality of what INEC has done.
Now, looking at what we've been seeing in perhaps the last number of days, the Naira redesign policy, the CBN rules, the Supreme Court, how is that affecting your association, members of your association?
Well, it's affecting us very, very difficult because going to the bank, going to various queues is very difficult. It's very difficult for persons with disabilities to access banks, to access queues, and I mean the situation is not good for us at all. And if it can be improved, it will be better.
And I'm sure these are some of your hopes for the administration to come.
Yeah, we hope so.
We'd like to thank you, Mr. Danlami Basharu, Executive Director, Anglo-Nigerian Welfare Association for the Blind. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
Well, some members of the Arewa community in Lagos have assured the People's Democratic Party of mobilizing over 42% of the votes in the state for the party in next week's presidential election. They promise to work hard because of what they say is Mr. Atiku Abubakar's contribution to education and national development.
As the presidential election day draws closer, efforts at winning takes different dimensions, with the contenders taking advantage of every opportunity. In this hall in Lagos, the members of the Arewa community were here to show solidarity for the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. The group gives reasons why it is pushing for an Atiku presidency.
Alhaji Abubakar Atiku is first among equals. He is best of the best. He is the beginning and the end of political development in Nigeria. But we still hope that after him, others will improve. He is an intellectual. He is a loving person. He is a wonderful person. He is a peace-loving person. He is a producer.
They promised to deliver over 40% vote for the PDP candidate.
He has done the work already. And the goodwill message is this. Tell His Excellency that we are ready in Lagos. He also told us that if we're able to get 30%, he'll be happy. We are going to get 35 to 42% in Lagos for him.
Mr. Atiku Abubakar, who is represented here by his son, promises to make good his manifesto should he win.
The Arewa community has a key role to play. You all know me, you all know who I am, and you all know who I represent. It is on this note I wish to urge all of you to maintain focus so we can be victorious come February 25th, 2023. You should vote your conscience and never allow anyone to intimidate you, as Nigeria belongs to all of us.
While political planning and calculations continue across party lines, these people say they will continue to work till their candidate takes the day at the poll, which is just in a matter of days. Timothy Crown.
More political stories across the country. The Joint Front of Civil Society Organizations in Nigeria, they've described the support of the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar, for the Naira redesign policy as suspicious. A statement signed by its national president, Mr. Barnabas York, partly reads, "It's more suspicious that most of the PDP governments that are backing the policy are currently battling the consequences of the anger caused by the same policy." Elsewhere in Imo State, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, says leadership problem and corruption are major challenges that have stalled Nigeria's development. Mr. Obi is promising that if elected president, his administration will provide purposeful leadership and tackle all forms of corruption. And you've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Don't forget you can join our conversations on our social media platforms. There they are showing on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker.